Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Sleepless Cinematic Podcast, where we explore our shared love for watching and discussing movies recorded in the late after-work hours, often in lieu of a good night's rest. I'm Julian.
I'm Emilio.
And I'm Madeline. The three of us are colleagues at a Midtown Manhattan music school. Yes, music is what brings us together, but movies are what keep us together talking at the end of the night. So we've created some order to this ongoing trend by recording these conversations, considering an overarching theme while we cycle through 5 unique guidelines for engagement.
You can email us at sleeplesscinematicpod@gmail.com. Seriously, we would love to hear from you. You can also follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and now on YouTube for updates, highlights, clips, and other visual supplements to the audio we record at Sleepless Cinematic Pod.
In addition to these main episodes, we record and release bonus one-off episodes as we see fit. And while we do this, you, the listener, can count on the three of us doing what we've grown to love, foregoing sleep for discussion about movies every other week.
And this week, we continue our current cycle of movies comprising Oscar-worthy rom-coms with a category we call Mise-Unseen, where the three of us watch a film that we each have not seen before and discuss our impressions and main takeaways from the first viewing.
And today we're talking Shakespeare in Love, the surprise critical and financial hit from 1998, directed by John Madden. No, not the football coach turned commentator, the British stage and film director. It was written by Mark Norman and the recently deceased Tom Stoppard. Rest in peace. It stars Joseph Fiennes as the titular Shakespeare, with Gwyneth Paltrow and Judi Dench in Oscar-winning acting turns, as well as a slew of other well-known British actors like Colin Firth, Rupert Everett, Geoffrey Rush, Tom Wilkinson, and Ben Affleck. And this week, we welcome in a guest that we're delighted to have join us. She's the host of Stone's Top 10s, a movie podcast where every season is dedicated to ranking and discussing films united by a topic. Though there is admitted indecisiveness while making these top 10 lists, what is not in question is the quality of this show. Our guest routinely does great work with a slew of fun and knowledgeable guests. We here at the Sleepless Cinematic Podcast were guests on her pod to discuss Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and Madeline and I both were guests on her show for separate episodes to discuss favorite 2D animated films. She also started and co-hosted a limited podcast reviewing the show Fleabag with fellow friend of the podcast, Marquita Reese. Very fun, by the way. That was a good one to take in. She's gracious enough to take time away from her Packers fandom and is staying up late with us to chat movies. Anna Stone, welcome to the Sleepless Cinematic Podcast.
Welcome.
Wow, that was a lot. Thank you so much.
He's good at those.
You're very welcome. We like
cow.
rolling out the red carpet for the people who could stay up with us.
I feel so honored. I intended to nap before this, and I didn't. So apologies for any incoherence. But I am so excited to be here and talk about this movie with all of you. I'm glad you enjoyed the Fleabag run. I don't know if anybody listened to that. I was quite emotional because it was my first time watching, and I unfortunately figured out a big part of season 1 live on air, which was apparently one of our most viewed videos is of me like bursting into tears when I figured out the end of season 1. So
right.
That was a lot, but it was great.
Yeah.
It's a great show. And I was delighted to listen to you guys and kind of use that as a way of running that show back in my brain. But it was super, super great. And Marquita, as per usual,
phenomenal,
just crushing it. You guys have great chemistry.
Thank you.
Yeah,
well, I am just so excited to be here and to talk about this movie with all of you. For once, I'm the one who has seen the movie before.
Yeah.
One time.
That's true.
Just one time. And I was like, it was 20 years ago, but still, I'm like, yes, I have a little bit of.
Yeah, you're the expert here.
Up, but we can
we
pretend.
will be deferring to you. But really, we found, and I'm sure this was part of Emilio's thought process originally when we discussed bringing you on, but this actually fits pretty well in your current cycle. What movies are you currently talking about on your show?
Okay, so I've just started season 9, which is classic literature turned film. I'm combining two of my great loves, reading and watching movies together. So it's a little bit of a shift from my normal schedule. Not gonna lie though, every other week is kind of really where it's at. But
Totally. We agree.
so I'm yeah, I'm reading all of the books and also discussing the movies. Madeline's going to be on an episode I don't know when this is dropping, but
so this will come out, what, January?
Mid-January, like
Or
20th? I want to say
Yeah.
21st.
perfect. Then listeners can go check out Madeline on my podcast as we delved into some Russian literature and Keira Knightley era type of film with Anna Karenina.
Yes.
So I'm really excited.
I'm
Love
so
it.
pumped for this. I finally got around to starting this book. I've attempted it before and have not gotten that far, and I've already gotten further on this attempt. And this time I will make it all the way through. So I'm very excited to get through this and to see the movie for the
Absolutely.
first time.
Oh, yes. I believe in us. We've got
Yeah,
this.
totally.
Awesome. But yeah, we're all here to talk about Shakespeare in Love. And I think we've all said a little bit about it already. But before we really get into discussing this movie, it should be noted that, well, there's another movie out right now in theaters that has to do with the love life of William Shakespeare, at least as one of its many threads. And so Shakespeare in Love is not to be confused with Hamnet.
Great
Yeah.
pick.
This is very
Yes,
true.
that's Chloe Zhao's new film adapted from the novel. Like, as I said, Shakespeare's Love Life, I've seen it. It's just a slice of that movie. There's a lot going on in it. I recommend it. It's a great movie. And honestly, like, kind of great for a double feature with Shakespeare in Love.
Yeah, I believe that. I'm very excited to see that.
Oh, I'm sure.
But they're not the same thing, so don't confuse them.
That's very true. And although I guess you could consider Shakespeare in Love to be an extremely loose adaptation of Twelfth Night or like a prequel to it, this film is not to be confused with another adaptation of Twelfth Night, which is She's the Man from
Oh, yeah.
2006, which is starring Amanda Bynes. And I saw this movie on my first date.
Wow.
Oh,
So
that is core
Totally.
memory right there.
it was in a
Great
group.
choice.
How was
And
it was
the,
in a
the
group.
theater
Okay,
was
there we
sold
go.
out. In fact, it was so sold out that they oversold the theater. I think
No
Amanda
way.
Bynes had a lot of power at that time.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, she did.
Oh, going to movie theaters too is like young tweens
Yeah.
and teenagers also had a lot of
Totally.
power.
When it was affordable.
Yeah, exactly. When it was $7.
Yeah.
When was that? Like
Yeah.
2006?
We did that.
2006, yeah.
Yeah, I that was a movie I would have been too young to see it at the time, but I remember when it was out.
I love that movie.
I think I haven't rewatched it in quite a while, but I imagine it holds up maybe, at least comedically. Channing Tatum's also in that, and I feel
He
like he
is.
just gets better and better as time goes on.
He's also like funny in that
Yeah.
movie, which Channing Tatum allowed to be funny is the best Channing Tatum there is. So like
Totally.
Yeah.
that's again one of those movies that I quote an inordinate amount of times, like in the normal discussion.
Awesome. And Shakespeare in Love is not to be confused with the show Something Rotten, a Broadway musical from 2015 that my wife was part of the original Broadway cast of. Also a, retelling and reimagining of what might have been happening in the fringes of William Shakespeare's circles as a hit writer in turn of the century Britain. And I love Something Rotten. I ride for that every chance I can. So I would tell you, if you have the ability to see that on a stage, or if you happen to find some rip of the Broadway show, absolutely see it. It is wonderful and so much fun. But don't confuse it with the film we're talking about today, Shakespeare in Love.
Definitely.
Okay, mine is kind of cliche, but I said that Shakespeare in Love is not to be confused with, dare I say, Romeo and Juliet?
Yeah, of course.
Oh, sure.
Please, yeah.
So much of this film is like the actual
Yeah.
stuff from Romeo and Juliet.
Oh, yeah.
So a lot of the times I felt like I was kind of watching both at the same
Yeah.
time.
Sometimes it even has them kind of intercut between like they're doing
Yes.
Romeo and Juliet and then they're rehearsing the lines for Romeo and Juliet, and it's happening at the same time.
Yeah, but it's like when we're talking about all the different adaptations that there have been of Romeo and Juliet, I honestly, there was a time when I was less well versed in movies when I could genuinely have confused this with Shakespeare in Love. was the Romeo and Juliet from 1996.
The Baz Luhrmann.
Oh,
Yes,
yeah. Baz Luhrmann one.
Which stars a very young Leonardo DiCaprio and Claire Danes.
That's going to be on my season.
Oh,
Nice.
well, yeah.
Let's go. Yes.
I've got to check that out. I've heard it's a very good adaptation of the story. I have yet to see it myself, but that, was released pretty close in time to the movie we're talking about today.
I thought Elizabeth, too. It came out the same year.
Yeah.
It
It
has like
yes.
some of the same people in it.
I know.
Well, and I watched the Elizabeth trailer, and it like started with the same like red typeface where it was like in Elizabethan England in this time, and I was like, that is literally how Shakespeare in Love starts.
Uh-huh.
Like,
And on the subject of Oscars, I feel like Elizabeth is way more of an Oscar-coded movie than Shakespeare in Love.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
think was
So it's a
favored
really-
in several categories.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well,
So it's very interesting, I think, that this is the movie that, from an Oscars perspective, has this type of cachet behind it.
Yeah.
So, Julian, what is Shakespeare in Love about?
All right. Well, we've alluded to it some already, but it's 1593 in the city of London, and Philip Henslow, owner of the Rose Theatre, manages to allay the wrath of moneylender Hugh Fennyman by proposing to put on a new play by the prolific playwright William Shakespeare. Stuck in something of a creative rut, William, or Will, hopes to complete his new play, Romeo and Ethel the Pirate's Daughter, and have the role of Romeo performed by Richard Burbage, a highly esteemed actor on contract at the rival Curtain Theatre. But when a mix-up and some egos get in the way, this possibility appears not meant to be, and Philip Henslow begins auditions at the Rose. It's during this process that Will Shakespeare becomes aware of one Thomas Kent during a breathtaking audition, but when Will pursues Thomas, eager to cast him, Thomas flees to his, in air quotes, home down the River Thames. This Thomas is actually a woman named Viola de Lesseps, in disguise as a man, eager to perform the part of Romeo despite the law against women performing on stage at the time. The ongoing efforts to produce this play become entwined with a romance quickly blossoming between Will Shakespeare and Viola, who, despite her forced engagement to one Lord Wessex, is cast in the part she knows she was born to play. The tale that ensues is one of secrecy, jealousy, and ingenuity under the watchful eye of Queen Elizabeth I, and a commitment shared by Will, Viola, and all their collaborators that the show, newly titled Romeo and Juliet Against All Odds, must go on.
Very nice.
After you said that, it reminded me that this movie's not to be confused with Pirates of Penzance.
Definitely.
Oh, that
Because
too.
they
Yeah.
make reference when they're first talking about Romeo and Ethel the Pirate's Daughter about like, oh, I've already seen this and I didn't like it. And I imagine they're alluding to Pirates of Penzance.
I would have thought. And that's foreshadowing another element of this movie, which is even though I think they are pretty well integrated, all of the different references to modernity in it.
Yeah.
And so we've talked a bit about the plot, but most of us are coming in pretty cold to this movie. I guess, Anna, you being the one who has seen it before, do you want to say a little bit about what existing relationship you've had with this film?
Sure. So I saw this as a freshman in high school because when we did our Romeo and Juliet unit, our teacher in my advanced ELA class, language arts class, gave us like a list of things that we could do for extra credit. And I have always loved movies. I was not always as like well versed in film as I am starting to be, but I've always loved movies. So when there were movie options, I jumped on my bike and went to the Blockbuster down the road and rented those so I could get that extra credit. So this was offered as extra credit for my language arts class. And
Love it.
Nice.
my parents were like really strict about my media consumption growing up. Like
Hey, me too.
through all of high school and like into college, my mom would make me leave the basement during the like fade to black sex scene in Pearl Harbor. It is not very scandalous. Now that I've seen it as an adult, I'm like, what?
I'm glad I'm not the only person whose parents made them leave the room during certain scenes of movies.
Oh, for sure. They conveniently needed a drink or a snack. But somehow I was able to watch this when I was a freshman.
It's an assignment.
And That is honestly the only logic I could think of as to how my parents let me watch this. And I didn't remember a whole lot about it, except for that I did enjoy it and that I remembered the setting being kind of gross. And all of that really still fit. But as an adult, I was shocked when I found out how many awards it had won.
Yeah.
Not because, like, I didn't enjoy it, but just because it's not the type of movie that I associate with, Academy Awards. And so that was kind of my going in this time around, was like, okay, let me see maybe what the Academy was thinking. I still am not sure that I know. But that was what I had going in, was my experience as a 15-year-old watching this movie and being like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
There are boobs.
Yeah. Julian may be able to expand upon the reasoning behind the Oscar stuff. He has some text that he can refer to. Yes. I just want to quickly say that I had a very similar experience, but with the 1968 Romeo and Juliet, in that we read Romeo and Juliet my freshman year of high school, and then they played the 1968 Romeo and Juliet, which does have a topless scene in it. And we watched it in class, and one kid had fallen asleep. And when he is awoken from all of us kind of chittering about it, he runs to the front of the classroom and tries to rewind the VHS. But then our teacher got mad and turned it off and wouldn't let us finish it.
That tracks.
Yeah.
That tracks.
Yeah. Does that sound like the students that you encounter, Anna?
I gotta tell you, I am incredibly diligent in previing things before I show them.
You would not make this mistake.
It just, no. I wouldn't. It's just something that would happen.
Yeah. You were talking about the whole Oscars angle on this. And for the last couple of years, we've taken this beginning of the calendar year as a moment to dig into movies that are in some way related to the Oscars. And I love coming back to these movies with that in mind, where you're like, this one tracks, this one doesn't, and what constitutes Oscar worthy, what constitutes an Oscar winner. So the ability to look back now, 27 years or so since the success of this movie was really solidified. I'm excited to get into that angle of this. Like, does this hold up?
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll just say really briefly, this is a movie that I remember when it was winning everything. A rather formative Oscar telecast, I think, for me. I just remember thinking, I remember hearing about this, but I was of the ilk that thought that Saving Private Ryan was going to run away with this at the time.
When Dougie and I put this on, he was like, my uncle hates this movie. And it's just because he was really gunning for Saving Private Ryan.
Gunning for
Saving Private Ryan. There were a lot of people like that in 1998, 99. Yeah. So yeah, but for whatever reason, this is just a movie that I never really got around to. I'm excited to have gotten around to it now, though. And we'll get into it a little bit more later, but yeah.
And this movie was, I think, like most of my prior knowledge of it existed in retrospective accounts of its Oscar wins. I became aware of this as, first and foremost, a Best Picture winner. And I think there's a lot of chagrin over it beating Saving Private Ryan at that ceremony.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I kind of came away from that thinking, is this just kind of one of those Academy chose a favorite that's not very good sort of movies? But over time, I started to get the sense that it has a good reputation in general. And that I want to credit in particular one person who's adjacent to a past guest on this podcast. So my cousin Sylvie, who has been on once before and who I've referenced many times, her partner, Lauren Russo, is a big fan of this movie and was someone who helped get me out of that initial thinking that this is something to skip. That, she was one person who helped me come around to the idea that, okay, maybe this is something worth checking out. I should note too that Lauren is a big Shakespeare expert, so her opinion is one worth listening to about this and all things Shakespeare, really.
Yeah, that would hold water for me too.
And so then that lingered in my mind for a little while, and then one thing led to another, and we decided to cover it. And I think we'll get more into it in a little bit, but I liked the movie. I had fun with it. I don't know if I'm really certain yet where I think it lands in this whole Oscars race that it was a part of, but we'll discuss that more.
Yeah, I enjoyed this movie a lot. Dougie didn't really get into it, but I had fun with this. I'm glad we watched this. You know, as Emilio pointed out, this time of year, we often discuss movies that are somewhat adjacent to the Academy Awards. And we've certainly covered way worse movies that have won Academy Awards and have won Best Picture.
Crash.
So, exactly. But I think about, like, we covered Coda, which was a movie that I found like mostly pleasant. And like, do I think that it deserved to win over Power of the Dog? No, but it was still like a mostly pleasant watch. And I actually would rank this personally a little higher than Coda. I had a good time with it. I thought it was kind of delightful.
Yeah.
And there was something great that you said when we discussed Coda. Whenever I think of this, I really can't help but almost quote you verbatim, Madeline, which was just that when we discussed its win, the fact that that movie was such a good thing for representation of deaf people made you say that I can't in good faith take this win away from it.
Yeah.
That's another interesting thing to consider. Like, well, once the win is there, then how do you interpret it? Yeah, which I think is a very applicable question to Shakespeare in Love too.
I do have to say, when it comes to the Saving Private Ryan question, as someone who didn't watch that movie until they were an adult and now watches it like multiple times because I'm a history teacher, I think that there's something to be said about the fact that Saving Private Ryan doesn't romanticize World War II in a way that it is so often romanticized that I think maybe put it above this. And like, I love a romantic movie and I love a rom-com, and that was my first season I ever did was rom-coms because it was just like the easiest thing for me to think of because I love them so much.
Nice.
But when I was watching this like with the mindset of this beat out Saving Private Ryan, I was like, I just don't know that I can get on board with that.
Mm-hmm.
So there's like a lightness of tone to this movie that, Madeline, you use the word delightful to describe your experience watching this. And also, when I think about romantic comedies, so with movies, there's a typical suspension of disbelief. Romantic comedies, for me, there's another bar they've got to pass, I think, sometimes. And that's not always a bad thing. Sometimes that's like a really wonderful aspect of a romantic comedy. It's like you're giving yourself so fully over to what's happening on screen. When I let myself go there, I usually have a great time watching a romantic comedy. And this kind of got me there. It took a second, but there's a scene kind of towards the middle of the movie where I was like, oh boy, this movie's cooking with gas.
Yeah.
and even a little bit before, when I started to see some of the interwoven elements of the movie, where I would use the same word. I found this to be a rather delightful movie. And I even felt like the ending had a lot of delight to it as well, just the way it tied up a lot of the loose ends, and Judi Dench is sort of the like deus ex machina that comes in, and it's just like a hereby decree, and everyone's
and
like, okay,
she just
cool.
like comes in and does her thing. Like, she's so good at doing that type of role.
Yeah.
I do wonder if there wasn't a little bit of fatigue because Titanic was the year before, if there was like a bit of fatigue with the historical tragedy movie that they were like, oh, you know what though? Shakespeare in Love makes me feel really good. And
totally. It's the zag.
Yes.
I think that's a great point.
And the performances are something to write home about. So
Totally.
I think that could totally do it as well, right?
Like, I think this is one of my favorite Gwyneth Paltrow performances. I think she's great in this.
Yes.
And I haven't seen Elizabeth. I know that Cate Blanchett was kind of favored by a lot of people to win. So I can't speak to whether or not this is a performance that I would like more than Cate Blanchett is in Elizabeth, but I think Gwyneth is really excellent in this.
Yeah, agreed.
agree.
And I'd quickly go back to two things that you said, Emilio, that struck me. I get what you mean about like rom-coms having a bit of a high threshold to pass, when it comes to pleasing the audience. And it's, it's making me think of a term that our recent multi-time guest, Rob McClure, said, which is the appropriate level of amazement. And, what he was talking about was about characters reacting to extraordinary things within the plots of movies. But what I think there is here is that sometimes because rom-coms as a genre are maybe a little more mundane, for lack of a better word, than many other classic genres of film, it can take a little more ingenuity in the storytelling for it to really strike a chord with people. And I feel like Shakespeare in Love is a good example of a rom-com that does that, whether it be due to its period setting, the mix of distance from the present in which it came out, coupled with all the parallels to that very same present, and just all these excellent performances that we're talking about, excellent production design, costumes, all that sort of stuff. I really feel like this movie strikes a rather appropriate level of amazement amongst those who watch it. And the second thing I wanted to go back to that you said, Emilio, was that you, of course, mean Dame Judi Dench.
Oh, yes.
That is true.
Yeah.
She's fantastic.
Dame right.
Yeah, that's going to be a little bit of a trend here from now on. If there's a dame, we are going to rightfully point that out.
Okay. Duly noted. I also feel like this movie came out smack dab in the middle of that era where a lot of Shakespeare stories were coming back to the big screen, the sort of reimaginings, or the like, hey, it's Shakespeare, but it's with teenagers, or hey, it's Shakespeare, but it's with Ethan Hawke in a blockbuster. And, and so there was a little bit of a cultural appetite for putting a twist on the source material, I think, that I'm sure is one of the reasons why it was popular. But its popularity is kind of a surprise to me because it's a perfectly fun movie. But like, is this a world beater? Like, I don't know. Just the Gwyneth Paltrow of it all maybe is a big part of this.
For me, it was the Geoffrey Rush. That is such a goofy role. When I saw that he got supporting actor, or at least got nominated for it, I was shocked.
Yeah, my partner
so
was like,
goofy.
it's very cartoonish.
Yeah.
It's super cartoon. You know what my wife mentioned? She was like, yo, Joseph Fiennes in that movie is living up to that last name. And so maybe there's a little bit of that too. A confluence of like fresh faces with this older story reimagined, I guess.
Well, you mentioned Geoffrey Rush, and like he, at the time this movie was made, was a recent Oscar winner himself.
Yeah, for Shine.
For Shine in 1996.
Okay.
I mean, Ben Affleck had just won for the screenplay of Good Will Hunting too.
That's true.
And this movie, actually, it was shot and released in a pretty tight window. It was like, it would have been truly right after Ben Affleck had that Oscar win, because I think it was March to June 1998, and it was released that December. So it was tight.
Wow.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, we're talking about a bunch of elements of this film, and I think that it's been alluded to, but we haven't said too much yet about the fact that Shakespeare in Love is dealing with some very notable characters in a particular pocket of history in England, but it is fictional, or really fiction mixed with certain elements of reality. It's a certain kind of movie, and we've seen some other examples of things like it. Not only do they exist, but a lot of them have won Oscars. And so, how did this story's blend of fact and fiction strike each of you, and what parts of the film stand out to you as examples of either element?
I gotta say, I was not thinking too much about historical accuracy when I was watching this. I was kind of going for the vibes.
Yeah.
Partially because I'm not a super well-read person when it comes to Shakespeare. I've read, I think, maybe 5 or 6 of the big ones, but I'm not a big Shakespeare person. So I was kind of just letting this movie just wash over me.
Yeah.
Exactly. And just try to hang with it. For me, that was the right angle.
Yeah.
I could tell there were little peppered references. Like there's that one moment where he talks about like a plague on both the families. He passes the guy in the town
it's
square.
like a preacher or something.
Exactly. There were little moments like that for all the Shakespeare heads. And I'm sure there were a lot of other ones too. But I just kind of liked letting the movie spin its own yarn.
Yeah, like in Janet Maslin's review, she said that this movie, quote, is not constrained by worries about literary or historical accuracy. end quote. And I think that this looseness brings a playfulness to this film that if it was trying too hard to be entirely historically accurate, this wouldn't be a film at all, because this is like not a woman that existed in reality. Like, she is loosely based on a fictional character of Shakespeare's own creation. So the entire conceit of this movie has like no historical reference whatsoever. And I do think, as you said, Emilio, there are these references to other Shakespeare plays or even Romeo and Juliet itself. And the thing that I like about that is that he, as Will Shakespeare as a character in this film, references the fact that he's gotten a lot of inspiration from Marlowe.
Right.
You know, Marlowe's stamp is on a lot of his plays.
Sure.
And you see that not just with Marlowe, but also the preacher on the street, or even things Viola says to him. He's getting inspiration from the world around him. And no one's saying like, this movie is claiming Shakespeare is a fraud. Like, I think that it works because it shows you how a writer works. A writer takes inspiration from the people around him and the things that he experiences. And I think that works in the context of this film.
Yeah, I like that read.
Yeah.
So, Julian, I love this question because
Thank you.
this is my conundrum like all the time when it comes to historical movies, because as you know, a historian, I love and hate this type of storytelling because I love the fact that a lot of times, and I talked about this recently on my Anastasia pod, but a lot of times these type of movies that have a historical setting or have a group of historical characters will draw people to that era in history for the first time, maybe. Okay, so it can get them to want to know more about what's real and what's not, and what it fits and what doesn't. And Madeline, to what you were saying, that idea of like, we don't have a lot of real concrete information about who Shakespeare was, and the idea that there could be a collection of people that worked on some of these works is one that gets batted around. So like, I like that part of this, but I do also hate this type of storytelling because there is like a sizable chunk of people who just take it at face value and are like, oh yes, this is real and this is exactly how it happened. I'm looking at you, Pearl Harbor. Okay. Did not mean to bring up that movie twice in the pod. But again, another one that like, great movie, very moving, very entertaining, not accurate. Like,
of course.
So like, this idea of it can really spark people's love and interest in that time period or in that group or in that event. I love that. But it's like a double-edged sword. I also want to say that like, the historical accuracy of how disgusting London was at this time is almost too on point for me. Like, I could have done with less of that.
I did like the buckets of shit that were just like randomly getting dumped.
Nope,
it took
that
me
was what
like
I'm
the
talking
second
about.
or third one. I mean, I don't think I would have liked to have been on the street,
but it really immerses you
experience
in
that.
the film.
It doesn't. I also think it's kind of funny. I'm not going to lie. Like, I think, and maybe this is coming from a place of privilege here. Now that I've lived in a world with plumbing, you know, for centuries, but seeing that in a movie where people are just walking and not registering it, to me, is humor.
I mean,
so
that's
I
valid.
like it. But your point is a good one.
It's gross.
Yeah, it is gross.
Yeah. And that feels kind of like a detail that certain comedies that play up the grossness of certain times, like almost to like exaggerated effect, get weirdly accurate. I mean, like in Monty Python and the Holy Grail, the whole "bring out your dead," that whole sequence. But yeah, in terms of like how it registers as historical fiction, I have to admit that watching Hamnet recently did give me a particular angle for viewing this movie, because I mean, I don't think it's spoiling anything about Hamnet to say that movie is much more about the life that Shakespeare left behind sporadically in Stratford upon Avon. And
Which is talked a little bit about
referenced
in this film.
It's referenced with a mug, which is, I think, often cited as one of the prime examples of allusion to contemporary times
Yeah.
in Shakespeare in Love. That's not the only reference, but it isn't a memorable one. But then on the topic of like not knowing much about Shakespeare's movements and all that sort of stuff, that was definitely a conscious fact when it came to writing the film. So the DVD, at least the one that I checked out from the New York Public Library, actually has 2 commentaries on it, so it's quite stacked. One of the 2 screenwriters, Mark Norman or Tom Stoppard, who was talking about how Shakespeare, being this figure who is so well known and yet has a lot of ambiguities, kind of makes him the perfect figure for a treatment like this. That you can blend the well-known facts with fiction too, and that like some of the facts in the movie, like the death of Christopher Marlowe, like that is based on fact.
Right.
But then there are certain characters who are entirely inventions. Like we haven't said anything about Lord Wessex yet. The distance from the era and the unknowns of that time allow for this sort of imagination. And the fact that this was such a lauded movie at the Oscars, I think, puts it in dialogue with some other movies that take similar liberties. The one that comes right to mind is Amadeus.
Yeah.
Which is, I think it's well known that it's not like the most factual film, but it's generally beloved, I think, for a lot of the same reasons as you were mentioning, Emilio, that it's like, it's more about, you know, the vibes, the journey it takes you on, and a certain amount of suspension of disbelief.
It's funny because I enjoyed Shakespeare in Love, but to me, putting this movie and Amadeus on that same level feel not sacrilegious, but just like they are very different movies. And maybe that's actually an interesting thing to consider, because I think at this core, this movie is trying to be a light, fluffy romantic comedy that is scratching an itch for literary nerds. And
I was going to say it's kind of frivolous. Like
it is. Yeah. It is. And there are moments where it kind of tries to go for more. And I feel like that's when this movie loses me. Like, I feel like the very end of this movie, it didn't quite land the plane for me on that. I mean, to me, Amadeus is that movie has so many just incredible ruminations on like what it means to be good but not great at something. And to me, Shakespeare in Love was kind of missing this core theme that I think just like allows it to resonate. And that maybe is part of the Oscar thing. Not to like say that this movie and Amadeus, you know, can't be liked, because I actually think they're both like good movies for what they are. But to me, Amadeus, like I get why that movie was a hit then, why it was beloved and lauded. And this one, I'm like, they're politics.
Yeah.
You know,
Totally.
like.
Yeah, but Julian, I do see your point. Just if you look at like these are both films that are taking a fictional approach to real life people.
Exactly.
Sure.
Obviously, at their core, they're very different films. I think we can all agree on that.
Yeah. And something that Shakespeare in Love really made me think about is that, you know, because it is specifically about Shakespeare and in a lot of its plot points echoes common tendencies in his own work, it really made me think about the classic definition of a comedy. You know, let alone a romantic comedy. All these tropes of Shakespearean plots, whether it be like mistaken identity or, you know, lovers being kept apart by familial forces and, you know, societal expectations, what is perceived to be a viewing of a ghost. Yeah,
that's
like
true.
these.
Admittedly,
I'm getting some of this from the Wikipedia page, which this movie has a good Wikipedia page. I recommend checking it out. But there being all of these tropes, and I think one of the screenwriters, I want to say it was Mark Norman, made reference in the commentary to the idea that in, you know, a Shakespearean comedy, the point is to kind of to dress down the main character a little bit, to make a fool of him, only to sort of bring, you know, if it's a he, to bring him back up again, which, you know, he felt like was his intention with this film. So I think that, you know, when we're considering this genre of rom-coms, it's, you know, whatever politics go into the accolades that this film receives, I think it's very interesting that something that is so adherent to the classical definition of a comedy should get this acclaim.
And I like that you're talking about the Shakespeare tropes, because Emilio, you were talking about the ending, and obviously this movie kind of digs its own hole in that it Shakespeare is its main character, and we know that he does not live happily ever after with this, high society lady. But one of the things that I also think this film is trying to do is mirror the ending to Romeo and Juliet in a certain way without the same amount of tragedy.
Right.
Sure.
But it's trying to keep the star-crossed lovers apart in some way, hence the ending of this film.
Right. Well, we started comparing this movie, I think, to other films already, but why don't we shift over and solidify this? Can we start comparison corner?
I can go first.
Go for it, Anna. Yeah.
So I was kind of thinking along the lines of 2007's Becoming Jane, which stars Anne Hathaway as Jane Austen and James McAvoy as Tom Lefroy, her love interest. One thing that really stood out to me while watching this was the writing process that you see Will Shakespeare go through. He spits and he's, sharpening his quill, and the physical mess of the ink on his fingers and the frustration, and how, like we have mentioned before, how he's pulling from all the things that he sees and all of these interactions that he has. It's very much like Becoming Jane, this idea of like, how did Jane Austen come up with her ideas, and that almost parallel storytelling of what she's writing mirroring what she's experiencing, very much like this movie as well. So that just really stood out to me as something that could go hand in hand.
Totally.
Nice. I
Very
like that.
cool. I've not seen this, but I've heard good things.
Yeah, same here.
I haven't seen it in a while, but it's good.
Yeah.
That, I think, is a very appropriate comparison on several levels. Obviously, like Jane Austen and William Shakespeare lived in very different times, but authors who are typically associated with costume dramas and the films depicting the process. We've already talked a lot about the romance and the comedy elements of it, but there is just this sense of process in it, like the group of people getting together to put on a show. Like, I feel like that element of the movie was really what I latched onto in the first comparison that came to my mind. And that movie is The Full Monty.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, thank you.
I love The Full Monty.
It's great movie. No connection to Monty Python.
You guys just have me adding movies to my list of things I've never seen. So thank you.
Oh, yeah. Hey, thank you. Now I want to watch Becoming Jane more. Yeah, The Full Monty. It came out just 1 year before Shakespeare in Love. And I mean, the first point of connection that I noticed was Tom Wilkinson.
Yes.
Because I think that The Full Monty, if I remember correctly, that was a big breakout movie for him. And this comes right on the heels of that. But also this sense of some of the people putting together this production being kind of down on their luck, particularly Henslow with his debts, and that all of the characters in The Full Monty, they're kind of down on their luck financially at the beginning of that movie. And then, another scene in Shakespeare in Love that immediately made me think of The Full Monty was the audition montage.
Yes. I love that this movie has one.
The Full Monty has a great audition montage itself. And then just this general sense of a collective banding together in spite of hard times, and a group of a lot of mostly men getting together and finding a sort of companionship to make sure that the show goes on.
Great pick, Julian. I love this.
Thank you very much.
I don't have any big comparisons. I just think at this time it's hard to watch like Gwyneth Paltrow or Colin Firth and not think about the other adaptations of, classic literature that they're in, like around this same time. And I thought it was really interesting to see Colin Firth in a role like this when, previously doing like Pride and Prejudice. It's like they're very different characters, but you can see the growth in him throughout each of these characters throughout the 90s. So you can't watch this, I think, and not think about Pride and Prejudice. And then Emma comes out at a very similar time to this. So the two of them are just like really in the thick of these of that time period. They're both just so good. Same thing with Judi Dench. The three of them in particular are so good at tapping into like this particular era of time. And it's kind of phenomenal because we think about, I don't know if you guys have heard like the term like Instagram face when we talk about like these modern actors, basically like sometimes you will look at them and be like, this person does not look like they could live in the 1800s. Like they look like
Absolutely.
they've been on Instagram.
Cough, cough, Margot Robbie in Wuthering Heights.
Oh my God.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
I am so ready to see what a mess Wuthering Heights is. I'm so curious. For
Yeah.
real.
This just looks like 50 Shades
It
with
really
the
does.
names of characters in Wuthering Heights. Like, but I digress. I want to say I literally watched Emma this week.
Right.
And while I enjoyed Gwyneth Paltrow's performance in that, it did not hold a candle to her performance in this movie.
Well, in this film, and a lot of the characters have this unique challenge of they have to perform Shakespeare in a realistic way also. So they're performing multiple roles in this, and the role of Romeo has layers in that it is Viola playing Romeo or Viola playing Juliet. So I think that
Or
that just
Viola also playing a guy.
exactly. So I think that
Yeah.
adds this additional layer to her performance that is really interesting and is just this additional challenge to her and to a lot of the other characters. But I think her in particular.
Yeah. I
I
feel
mean,
like
it's Viola playing Thomas Kent playing Romeo.
Yeah.
Right. In a movie.
I think I got them all.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it's like it makes me think of like the chops that must go into the performances of actors who play doppelgangers
Yeah.
in movies, like
Or
Nicolas
body
Cage.
swaps.
Yeah.
Or body swaps,
You know,
or
like
like Nicolas Cage in Adaptation, or more
Or
recently
Face Off.
like Michael B. Jordan in Sinners.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone who has to play two characters, it's I feel like you can compare Gwyneth Paltrow's performance in this to those kinds of movies too.
I mean, we all know Lindsay Lohan did it best.
In Parent Trap.
Truly
Yeah.
did.
Trap.
I mean, I also, one of the other trailers I watched for this film was Sliding Doors, which is not
yeah.
a movie that I've seen, but is a movie where Gwyneth Paltrow has to play two different people. And again, it's from the same year. She is busy.
Oh my
But
gosh.
essentially, it's like she has one life if she makes the train and another life if she misses the train, and she has to play both of these. So, she's just
That's a fun movie.
she's got like a
Yeah.
lot of tall orders at this time.
This one's going to be kind of short, but I was thinking a little bit along the lines of you, Julian, comparing this to a movie that was about putting on a play. And the one that came to mind is another movie that also won Best Picture, and that's Birdman,
Oh
the
yeah.
2014 film. So one of the things that really got me about watching Shakespeare in Love was a lot of the little details of the world. That was very fun for me, and I think that's one of the things that Birdman gets right. You're not just with the actors, you're with the lawyers and the writers and like the critics and then their family members. And so there are all these peripheral characters to what's happening in the process of putting on the play or the performance that I really enjoyed. And I also liked that both of these movies are very aware of time. It really got me that Shakespeare in Love is like, she's got 3 weeks to pull this off. Her parents are out of town, it's like, and that also the movie starts with, we're putting this play on and it's like Birdman has this like all one continuous shot, very kind of immersive in terms of time feel. I was thinking of Birdman watching Shakespeare in Love.
On that same kind of topic, I very briefly thought about Waiting for Guffman at the beginning of this. Just, I think, because like Geoffrey Rush's character has to kind of swindle a lot of these actors in a certain
Yes, he
way,
does.
because he's like, oh, well, I can't pay the actors because I have to pay this other guy. So it's like, oh, you share in the profits. So it's a
And there is never profit.
So Philip Henslow is the Corky St. Clair of the
Yeah.
16th century.
Yes.
exactly. That's exactly
what
what
it
I'm
is.
saying.
Well, before we transition out of comparison corner, can I do a hear me out one for you all?
Yes, please.
Yes.
So, just a few surface level elements of Shakespeare in Love. You've got characters who are in debt, maintaining a secret identity. There's a romantic conflict having to do with a character that is engaged. And one of the characters on one side of that conflict is an actor. Those are a few details that this film has in common with Spider-Man 2. Specifically that one. I don't know for sure, but I had to wonder if, this is like one of those movies where a lot of scenes kind of got lifted and parodied in the years after. Yes, it's a superhero movie, but also considered like at its time one of the greatest superhero movies that had ever been made. If it was going for a little bit of like Oscar treacle with some of those scenes. And, you know, I don't know if Sam Raimi watched Shakespeare in Love for notes at any point, but just saying, I saw those similarities.
My guess would be that he was a voting member of the Academy at this time, so I hope he saw it.
Oh, that's true. And actually, A Simple Plan, that was
same
released
year.
at almost like the same month as Shakespeare in Love. So good pull.
Thank you.
Yeah.
No, I mean, hey, we love a good hear me out. So,
And this has been Comparison Corner.
Yes, we've been heard out.
I will say, I alluded to this a little bit with my comparison, but I was generally tickled by the way that this movie plays with more modern tropes of what it's like to work in the theater and the many different types that populate the creative and financial side of the arts and like the gig economy a little more generally. And so I wanted to ask you guys if there were any details or moments or characters that jumped out to you as either being very funny or perhaps accurate to how we like to talk about and poke fun of artistic types today. Was there anything that jumped out to you?
I think that Ben Affleck is used very
that's
effectively in this movie.
Let's go. Let's do
And
it.
it's like in this just enough. Anna, I'll let you take it, but I think that it's very easy to overuse Ben Affleck, but I think that there's just enough of him in this movie.
So, okay, I am not in the industry or like industry adjacent. Okay, I teach high school. So the whole Ben Affleck character of the guy who just needs his ego stroked. He just needs to be told that he's pretty and he's smart and he's the lead.
The name of the show is Mercutio.
And then when he goes to Will and he's like, I don't think this title is gonna do. I just don't think it's gonna work, man. It should be Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah, I know.
And then he's like, wow, you're so right. Good job.
I like his character arc.
Yeah.
I also had Fenneman because I love this idea of like the producer financier who like gets pulled in because the story is so good and they just can't stop.
Yeah.
Like they just don't want anyone to interfere because they want to know what happens next. And then they're just so excited to get a little part of it. And then they actually do a fantastic job.
Yeah.
I really liked that part where he was like, you know, I have this hat and I've seen apothecaries wear it. Like, do you think this is okay? You know, and he started off so much like, I just want my money. But then he gets pulled in. And isn't that just what theater and film?
It's the magic of the theater.
Yeah.
It pulls you in.
Yeah.
That moment really reminded me of a very small moment from a film that I really love called Once. There's a moment in that movie where they go and they try to get a loan from the bank. And the guy at the bank is like listening to this guy's tape and he seems really nonplussed. And then when it's done, he's like, can I show you something? And he pulls out his guitar and he's like, dude, I got songs too. And you know, right then you're like, they're getting the loan. It was kind of that where you're like, all these money people secretly deep down, like there's like an artistic yearning in them. And I like that too.
It also makes me think of the like boat rower.
Oh yeah,
that's
my
my
guy.
guy.
Point is also like, oh, I'm something of a
That's
writer
my
myself.
guy right there. I love that. He's like, it's not going to take you long to read, and he's like, oh, dude, I don't know if I have time for this.
He's like, you have to know a
I'll
publisher.
bet you have the contacts with the publishing houses.
That actually lightly justifies my Spider-Man theory because the famous quote from the first one, I'm something of a scientist myself. But yes, the boat rower, I totally agree. And a little bit has been said about the company of actors, but beyond Ned Allen, who was a real actor at the time, who Ben Affleck plays. There were a bunch of interesting characters in that company. The one who I wanted to shout out is the character Sam Goss, who is played in the movie by an actor named Daniel Brocklebank. And that's the one who plays Juliet, who's always wearing the dress. He's just one of those actors. Daniel Brocklebank has this like very evocative face.
Yeah, and he's a face that I think you recognize if you've seen him in anything else. You're like, that's a face. He doesn't look like anyone else.
Right. But also that Sam Goss is prominently featured in the production and, a secondary character in the movie's story. But that, this I feel like is emblematic of someone who really is just a true professional.
Right.
And doesn't have necessarily the same ego to stroke as like Ned Allen as he's portrayed in this film does, who is there taking on what has to be a very brave role for an actor at that time in those circumstances too. performing, like in the context of the film, a really secondary part, but just really holding it down. I admired that role a lot.
Very cool.
Totally. I also liked Mark Williams playing the tailor. I think that addition of Henslow having to cast his tailor because he like owes debt to him. And the guy, he does pull it off, but you're kind of like, this is a disaster. This man should not be speaking in front of a crowd. He can barely talk.
Hold on. Is that Mr. Weasley?
Yes.
That's what I was going to say
Yes.
too. I loved that part. I don't know how real that is.
I love
but
how he also has an arc
Yes.
and that
Thank you.
there's that tension at the end because he starts the play like, oh no, he's going to set everything in motion.
Or
like
not.
If he screws up, then we're done for.
Yes.
But he does
I
it.
loved that part. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt.
That's okay.
I missed that he was the tailor. And I thought his like stuttering entrance and then the fact that he is able to pull the audience in, but with his, narration at the front end. And then when he comes off, he's like, was that okay? Like,
I know. Yeah.
Yeah.
precious.
Mm.
And he's got a great voice when he pulls it together. It is like, tell us what's what.
Yeah.
There were two things I wanted to point out. One, just as a gigging musician in the city, this really tickled me. There was that moment where Shakespeare, he gets turned away, I think, from the nurse at the door of like the giant manor. And he's walking out and he just runs into the musicians and he's like, yo, you guys are on this gig? And they're like, yeah, man, like people got to dance. I loved that so much. And also that like he was able to kind of get into the party. I'm on
the
band.
tambourine.
Exactly. I loved that energy. I was like, been there. I know how that goes. And then the other one that I loved was the idea of like chasing what is successful. So there's that early play that you see where that dog just gets the queen howling. And suddenly all the producers are like, how do we fit a dog into this show? There's that moment where Henslow's like, got the dog. And he's like, well, and this is when we can fit it in. I just thought that was so funny and really inspired.
Totally.
Another thing that I liked just in relation to your entire question, Emilio, something that reminded me kind of the studio system that we moved away from is the fact that these playhouses have like designated playwrights.
Yeah.
Like Shakespeare is like, I'm the playwright at the Rose. And I think he's also like on the side kind of trying to sell stuff to the other playhouse.
Yeah.
But he's like, I am the playhouse at the Rose. Like that is where I am employed. And that reminds me of kind of the studio system that we had in more of like Golden Age of Hollywood, where actors were designated to particular studios.
Yeah.
And that's not something that we really have anymore. Everyone has to freelance now.
That's true.
Yeah. But then talking about, I mean, like Emilio, your question was specifically about artistic types, but I think that there's also something to be said in a similar vein about the working characters in the film. And the one who you mentioned briefly, who I wanted to shout out, was the nurse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Played very memorably by Imelda Staunton. And that, she has just some of the best facial expressions in the whole movie.
Crushing it.
Like during scenes that she finds awkward, like, when she knows that Will and Viola are having sex in the other room.
Yeah.
And there's a servant coming to deliver something, and she just has the best expression to whisk her away. Yeah. But also, when in the very climactic scene where, this directly evokes Romeo and Juliet. I do know that much, where there's the balcony conversation,
right? Where
Viola is standing on the balcony and Will is down on the ground, but then he climbs up and finds Viola's lift, and the nurse has come and she screams and he falls down. I loved that moment in the movie. But yeah, also just like, the nurse she's not even named. She's just the nurse.
Yeah.
This character who is just the help, who has this breadth of emotion predicated on making sure that everything goes okay for Viola. And you see that there's a struggle that she goes through, just to make sure that, she is holding things down for someone of a noble family.
I'm glad that you pointed out that the nurse is unnamed, because I was rewatching part of this morning and I was trying to decide if the nurse and Viola have enough lines that don't relate to a man for this movie to pass the Bechdel test. And then I realized the nurse is not named, and that's a stipulation. So even if they do have enough lines, this movie does not pass the Bechdel test.
Ooh.
Because she's not named.
God,
Interesting.
that's
Very
infuriating.
interesting point.
Yeah. And we started our conversation talking about this a little bit, but much of the legacy around this film includes its surprising and somewhat controversial sweep at the 1999 Oscars, honoring the films of 1998. It won 7 awards, including Best Picture.
wow.
And as we said earlier, it beat out Saving Private Ryan for Best Picture. That was definitely the favorite. Gwyneth Paltrow beat out Cate Blanchett, who was favored for Best Actress. And we're discussing this film 27 years after it's released, almost to the day. It was released December 11th, and we were recording this on December 15th. And I'm curious from you guys, looking at it through a more modern lens, do you consider it to be worthy of these accolades, either singularly or, as you were getting into a little bit earlier, Anna, in comparison with the other nominated films?
So I was looking at not only Saving Private Ryan, but also American History X was this batch of Oscar nominees, and The Truman Show, which is one of those movies that like I feel like maybe wasn't seen as like very prestigious when it came out, but that now is like one of those, when you talk about the test of time, it's one that people reference so much.
That is the stealthiest prestige movie that has ever been made. That's like my hot take.
Right.
It doesn't feel like a prestige movie, and it absolutely is. Yeah.
So you have this not only competing with Saving Private Ryan, but also American History X and The Truman Show. And like, I don't know what the critical response is to American History X. I just know that that movie punches me in the gut every single time that I watch it. So like,
oh yeah.
But I do think, I guess I'm going to say I don't think it necessarily stands to Best Picture, but undoubtedly, I think Gwyneth Paltrow and Judi Dench were both so good and so memorable in those roles. The Judi Dench Queen Elizabeth is very reminiscent of the Dame Judi Dench as Lady Catherine de Bourgh in 2005's Pride and Prejudice, which is one of like my all-time movies ever. But I also feel like I'm not qualified to answer this because like I hadn't really seen any of these other films or like the other nominees, except for I know I saw Cate Blanchett in Elizabeth because it was offered as extra credit for language arts when I was a freshman.
The same class?
The same class, the same unit.
Yeah.
Okay, I probably got them at the Blockbuster at the same time. So like, there is a part of me that feels like I can't make that decision other than the fact that this is probably my favorite Gwyneth Paltrow role of any film that I've seen of hers.
Got it. So you're like acting performances, leave them. That's great. But Best Picture, maybe it gets knocked down a peg or two.
I think I have to say yes.
Okay. Yeah.
And part of that
I'm
is because
kind of
there's no
with you.
women in Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah.
So like, there's no comparison.
That's not
there.
passing the Bechdel test. No.
No.
Yeah.
No.
In a lot of ways, I'm with you, Anna, because, I feel like I have not seen a lot of the movies that were up for consideration this year. And thus, on many levels, I just can't judge totally fairly. Even like the Best Picture category. So Best Picture, like Shakespeare in Love wins. The other nominees are Elizabeth, Life is Beautiful, Saving Private Ryan, and The Thin Red Line. And the only other one of those that I've seen is Saving Private Ryan. I'm certainly curious to watch all the rest. And I'm a big Terrence Malick fan too. So The Thin Red Line, the fact that I haven't seen that eats at me a little bit. But yeah, Saving Private Ryan is the only one I feel really qualified to gauge in comparison to Shakespeare in Love. And it's this classic awards conflict where you've got two movies that on their own, you wouldn't really think to compare to one another, forced into this consideration. And a lot of the movies that, are in some of these other categories, like things that didn't make the Best Picture cut, but still were nominated for a number of things that year, be it like Hillary and Jackie or Gods and Monsters or A Simple Plan that already came up. Now, we've seen A Simple Plan. We covered it in our second episode ever on this podcast. But a lot of these movies, like, I can't say I know a single thing about Hillary and Jackie. And it's, makes me think of last year we watched My Cousin Vinny, and like a lot of the people nominated alongside Marissa Tomei in the supporting actress category that year was like, I don't know these movies. I can't judge fairly, but I'm glad Marissa Tomei won that award. It's a similar feeling here.
Yeah, I'm with you guys that I have some blind spots in the movies that are nominated in this year. If I look at this film and am not necessarily comparing it to and am not necessarily choosing from the nominees, but I'm just saying, like, does this film feel like it deserves best costume design and best art direction and best actress and best supporting actress? I'm like solid yes on all of those. I feel good about those for sure. Best screenplay, I'm gonna go with Anna, that I feel like Truman Show would come out ahead for me personally. I don't know that the screenplay is the strongest part of this, but I don't know that it's a weak screenplay either. And I feel similarly with Best Picture. It's like, it's a very effective film that does a lot of things really well. And it's like, if a film with great art direction, great costumes, and great performances and a decent screenplay wins Best Picture, then like, I'm not upset about that, I think.
Yeah.
So I'm actually on the other side of this. I've seen all of the movies here that were nominated for Best Picture. And it didn't occur to me until just now how interestingly this 5-horse race is like interwoven with one another. How it's like Shakespeare in Love and Elizabeth have that like costume period thing. Saving Private Ryan and Thin Red Line, they're sort of like two different poles of like the World War II film. And then you have Life is Beautiful, which is like kind of this blend between the whimsy of Shakespeare in Love and the seriousness of something like Saving Private Ryan. It's actually really hitting me how weirdly interrelated these 5 movies are.
Interesting.
And I don't know if that is bringing me to a greater point, but I would put Shakespeare in Love probably 4th in this.
Yikes.
I would put Saving Private Ryan ahead. I would probably put Life is Beautiful next. I feel like there was a universe where Shakespeare in Love has the Life is Beautiful trajectory, where it's like it's beloved just a little bit more. But I think Life is Beautiful beats it out. Yeah. I would say The Thin Red Line probably for me 3rd. And then I would say Shakespeare in Love 4th and Elizabeth 5th. Elizabeth is a good movie, but it's like Shakespeare in Love, the lightness of tone to me, I think is just very inviting for my sensibility for like this type of storytelling.
Yeah, and I noticed that one nomination that is lacking is that Joseph Fiennes does not get nominated for this. And it's kind of...
This is the Leonardo DiCaprio.
I think that he shouldn't be in.
I agree, and you will definitely agree when you hear who all was nominated for Best Actor that year. The win is Roberto Benigni, who we love, who won for Life is Beautiful, but he won against Tom Hanks, Ian McKellen, Nick Nolte, and Edward Norton. So it's kind of an insanely stacked Best Actor in a leading role year. So no, I do not think Joseph Fiennes deserves to be up there. Sorry, Joe.
Yeah, great performance though.
I just think he was almost too silly sometimes.
I know what you mean. He's going for it. He's also like, Holmes is rocking the eyeliner.
It's ink.
On his face, doesn't he have like, isn't he rocking
you're right.
eyeliner?
I'm just joking that's why he has eyeliner canonically, is because
he's just rubbing his
wiping
eyes
his
too much or
eyes and he
something.
has ink on his hands.
Yeah.
Sure.
And he's not taking his quill and putting it up to his eyelids.
No, he has a tick.
Right. But
it just perfectly applies itself.
Exactly.
There you go. Thank you, Anna.
Yeah.
But no, I get it. He's projecting to the cheap seats in his in a way that Gwyneth Paltrow, I think, is not. Like in every stage of her performance, she's just at the exact right frequency.
Paltrow's performance feels very sincere and like genuine, and he feels just cartoonish.
Yeah, it was my partner Dougie that said when Geoffrey Rush and Joseph Fiennes were on screen, he was like, this performance feels so cartoonish to me. And I'm like, which one? He was referring to Geoffrey Rush, but really it could be to either.
Yes.
And it's like, is he just portraying inspiration and like a kind of character that's lost in his emotions or something? But I agree with you. Cartoony is like not a bad way to characterize it.
Totally. Well, while we're talking about the accolades received by Shakespeare in Love, I feel I would be remiss if I didn't bring up a little bit about the build-up to it winning all these accolades, which I don't think you would call it a stain on the film itself, but it is a sad component of the legacy, which is that this film was produced, as anyone who watches it will most likely notice, by Harvey Weinstein. And this, at the time that it was released, the campaigning for it was considered the apex of a long buildup that had begun years earlier. And I now am bringing back an old favorite from this podcast, which is a book I received about 2 years ago to come for our cycle about unique Best Picture winners, Michael Schulman's Oscar Wars.
Welcome back, Michael.
Yes, let's go.
And you know that this campaign is important by looking literally at the cover of this film, because look who's on it. Gwyneth Paltrow.
Yeah, right there in the middle.
Just below
Yeah.
the Oscar itself.
So, like, in the inception of this screenplay, Mark Norman, he notably got the idea on a suggestion from his son. And here's a quote from the book about Mark Norman. He was researching in the UCLA library when he realized that the Elizabethan theater world felt strangely familiar. There were money-grubbing producers, warring companies, preening stars, contract disputes, lawsuits. It was, in short, Hollywood. If Shakespeare were alive today, he thought, he would be living in Bel Air and driving a Porsche with a 3-picture deal at Warner Brothers. The idea of Shakespeare as a struggling screenwriter, as a version of Norman, was the germ of Shakespeare in Love. And so that's where it begins. But then in the middle, there's a period where, and this is in the late 1980s, there's a period where Julia Roberts becomes aware of the film and tries to get Daniel Day-Lewis involved in it, and that goes into production.
Whoa.
And yeah.
Yeah, that could have been the main two.
Yeah.
Like Julia Roberts, Daniel Day-Lewis, Shakespeare in Love?
Yeah.
Wow.
And
okay.
Yeah, I believe it was
Wow.
Warner Brothers at the time that was attached to produce it, but that version of the film was scrapped. Initially also, Mark Norman had approached Edward Zwick, the director, about directing it, and he was ostensibly going to be the director for a while, but one thing leads to another, and Harvey Weinstein, at the time the head of Miramax, he gets a hold of the rights to this film and actually unceremoniously pushes Edward Zwick out of consideration as a director.
Interesting.
And, there's this cycle throughout the 90s where, starting in 1993, notably when a Miramax film, The Piano, is also up against a Steven Spielberg film, Schindler's List, and that race is lost, where Harvey Weinstein begins this escalating series of campaigns year after year, simply in an effort to try to get a golden statue. And he has some success with The English Patient in 1996 that leads to the stakes getting a little bit higher. And then by the time that Shakespeare in Love comes out, it is an all-out war with Steven Spielberg's company, DreamWorks, at that time.
Oscar war.
An Oscar war, to quote the book's title. Thank you, Madeline. And it just becomes this firestorm of ad spending and of recruiting. Like the term used in the book is leaving no stone unturned when it comes to recruiting potential viewers of the movie, even including luminaries who had not been considered for such things in a very long time. And then by the time all of this is said and done, and the awards are given out, the spending is done. This kind of begins like the aggressive campaigning that we see in a lot of subsequent years for awards. And then something that is said in the book about the film is that, and there are like genuinely accusations being made against Harvey Weinstein at this time for how bullish he was with his campaigning. Like people had thought that he really had tried to take over Hollywood by doing it. But then this is a quote from the book. The truth was that Shakespeare in Love had plenty of advantages. It had come out later than Saving Private Ryan. It played better than Ryan on VHS screeners. It had showed Hollywood a mirror of itself in which every anxious screenwriter was a potential Shakespeare. It was about a woman succeeding in a man's world, a resonant idea in Hollywood. Amid the sordidness of the Lewinsky affair, current at the time, it was a witty romantic escape.
Interesting.
Besides, could Sidney Lumet's vote really be bought by a party at Elaine's? Could a whisper campaign to a handful of journalists really change who won? Shakespeare in Love didn't need Dirty Pool to win, but now that it had one, the narrative solidified into 2 words. Harvey cheated.
Wow.
Yeah.
Harvey
And so, I mean,
cheated.
well said,
Interesting.
Michael Schulman, but that's like in the legacy of awards campaigning, that is a view on what happened surrounding this movie. I think watching the movie itself, it's, I find it personally easy to separate its content from its campaign.
Sure.
But
yeah.
when we talk about it as an Oscar winner and why it got all the awards that it did, I feel like if you know some of the facts that went into that reality, you can't really ignore them.
Yeah, that's true. Another thing that I had read as part of his campaigning was that he really put these actors through the ringer when it came to the publicity of this film.
Mm-hmm.
And I think now we do see actors going through these really long press tours. Like I think Wicked is a good example of this more recently, both
Totally.
part 1 and part 2. And I think particularly with those being 2 films, basically a film that was split in half, meaning the press tour more or less lasted like over a full year with like a small break in between. We see this, I think, more often now, but at the time, I think it was pretty rare to just throw these actors into a months-long press tour and expect them to, shake hands and kiss babies constantly as like a full-time job.
Yeah, and last year I remember hearing in his interview on the great WTF with Mark Maron that Brady Corbet, when he was in the midst of doing that very thing for The Brutalist, kind of lamented it and saying like you guys know we're not like making any money on these Q&As and things like that.
Yeah.
That it's just such a ringer. It occupies so much time and not always for very much in return for the people involved.
It's the convergence of art and commerce where you're like, how do we maximize the dollar value on this thing? And part of that is in accolades, in the type of eyes that will come when something is awarded something at the highest level. So yeah, interesting stuff. I'm with you though, Julian and Madeline, where it's like, as a consumer of media and art, we're constantly having to have those conversations. There is a separation of that type of thing. I think that happens. And for this movie, it feels like Harvey Weinstein is honestly just one very small part of this film.
Yeah,
It's
like
true.
Harvey Weinstein's stamp is on a lot of films in this time and the decade plus after, before he answers for his crimes. So it's like I can't hold it against any of these films that he has a stamp on it. Even films that he has a stamp on that there was a lot of pushback, from the directors and the screenwriters that didn't want to work with him and didn't want to cater to his whims, so I certainly can't hold his stamp against the films themselves most of the time.
Of course, yeah.
Because they're not typically the only person involved in the art.
Exactly.
There are so many other parts. And maybe that's just me like placating myself and making myself feel better about the fact that I still, maybe take this part out. I don't know. But Harry Potter is the big one right now.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, absolutely.
J.K. Rowling sucks. She's a terrible, terrible person. But not only did those books greatly influence my life, that changed the face of young adult literature and reading as a whole. So it's a very important conversation to have. And again, maybe I just make myself feel better by justifying it. But
I don't know. I think just in life, it's a part of life that we take the good with the bad, and the way that you just described J.K. Rowling is 100% right, which is that somebody who I think has some really terrible views and is, not somebody that I feel aligned with on a couple of big things, but left an indelible mark about something very different. And people are complicated. They just are. Like Harvey Weinstein can be a horrible human being and then can also have good taste in movies. It's it kind of sucks that that's the case, but that's people. That is humanity. And I think now more than ever, we're trying to kind of have that conversation. So, yeah.
Yeah.
I also want to say, Julian, I've now added this book to my Barnes & Noble list for tomorrow. Now I've got like 4 new movies on my never seen list, which is already obscenely long. But when I come home with another book tomorrow, my husband's going to be like, what? And I will say it was Julian's fault. So
and it's for research. Julian has cited this book on countless episodes of this podcast, so you can write it off on your taxes.
Well, I'm proud to be responsible for that. I'm honored. Thank you.
I will probably message you tomorrow and be like, hey, look at this book. I just got it. I need some non-depressing nonfiction books because
there's
the world is depressing enough.
Stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I'd call it non-depressing, but I mean, fascinating that it is. But I think a pretty fitting button to put on this whole discussion about art and artist, how you understand the legacy of a work that's not attributable to just one person. Shakespeare in Love was the first comedy that had won Best Picture in quite a long time. Does anybody want to guess what the prior comedy to win Best Picture was?
I know the answer, so I don't want to guess.
I know the answer too.
Doesn't know the answer. You don't have to. That's fine. We don't mean to put it on
Can I get a year? Can I get a year?
1977.
Oh, Annie Hall.
Yes.
Bingo.
Very good.
Yeah.
Excellent. Gold star.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any small detail that we want to shout out? Let's do it here.
I feel like a lot of mine I already touched on. The writing, scenes, everything that went into the writing, that just the mess of his creation. I loved that. But also all the points of inspiration, A Plague on Both Your Houses, we talked about, coming from the preacher, that like morning after discussion that they have after the first time that they have sex, which is almost like beat for beat what he writes for Romeo and Juliet, the pointing of the finger as if from a ghost from Hamlet, like all of that. As someone who like hasn't read Shakespeare since high school, I was like, I get that reference still. So I liked those moments, I guess I would say.
Totally.
Very cool.
I liked some of the realism. I assume I didn't fact check this when it came to the writing physically. Like, I like that. I don't know what he was like shaking onto his parchment to dry the ink, but I imagine that had to have some basis in reality, because otherwise it makes no sense. And I like that he uses a tomato to store his quills.
Love that
yes.
detail. That was great.
Yeah. We've said a lot about this movie, but we haven't quoted very many lines from it throughout this conversation, and there were a few I had to write down. I think Mark Norman said this film was written with like kind of a modern parlance, but an Elizabethan rhythm to it. And I think some great examples of that were, during the second boat ride scene that happens in the movie, when it's Shakespeare and Viola as Thomas, and, they're about to kiss before Shakespeare realizes that this is Viola. And he says, "For one kiss, I would defy 1,000 Wessexes." I loved that line.
Good one, Wessexes.
As well as in the scene when Ned Allen suggests to Shakespeare the title Romeo and Juliet, Shakespeare finishes that conversation by saying, "You're a gentleman," to which Ned Allen responds, "And you are a Warwickshire shithouse." Yes.
I love the use of shithouse in movies.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
I'm with you there. And this is less a little detail from the movie, but a reference I feel like I have to make, which is that, this is the first movie with an audition montage that I've watched since we covered Bamboozled a few months ago. And then in that movie, there's a great moment when MC Honeycutt in his audition references Shakespeare with "to be or not to be." That's the motherfucking question. So I just had to,
one of my favorite moments of that movie.
Mine too, yeah. Just had to shout that one out there too.
And another movie goes on the list.
Marquita will co-sign on that one. That's a great movie.
Yeah.
I wanted to mention 2 things. The first is, this was one of the funniest Colin Firth performances I can remember seeing.
He's great in this.
He's
Agreed.
An absolute riot. And I love how much he has to modulate, because he's clearly trying to be upper society. He is upper society, but he's like trying to fit that mold, but also just gets the comeuppance like almost in every scene. There's always something where it's like he can never really sustain the authority, which I think is hilarious, and he just plays it so perfectly. And then the other moment that just like cracked me the fuck up was when I think it was Marlowe. He goes to talk to Burbage, the actor, and he just has this full conversation with him while he's banging the woman. Like, I don't know what that was, but like there was something about it. You know, we're talking about the universe and the world in which all these like kind of eccentric people get to coexist, and I'm just like, that is so weird, but also just like respect. Like, I just made me laugh.
Any other little details anyone else wants to shout out?
Last thing on my mind is just I don't think we've said anything about the sheet that Will Shakespeare wears when he is at the risk of being discovered by Lord Wessex when he's in in Viola's family's estate. And it's a very simple gag, but that's one of the comical parts of the Joseph Fiennes performance that I really enjoy.
I would say too, the like completely obvious covering of the beard, like there's no attempt of like trying to feminize his face at all. It's just like we're counting on that eyeliner and those lashes to distract from the fact that he stands with his face like that.
Like, why is no one asking why this woman has kept her face covered for hours?
Love it.
So, guys, is it time to share some unlikely universes?
Yes.
Most certainly is.
Who would like to go first?
Let's
I
go.
can go first.
Yes, do it.
So, Master of the Revels, Sir Udman Tilney, as we said, is based on a real person. He seems to have the authority to shutter the 2 London theaters that we see in this film. However, when he's embarrassed by the Queen at the opening of Romeo and Juliet, he begins to rethink his harshness towards the world of drama. And in the vein of the rest of the film, the rest of this unlikely shared universe is going to ignore any historical accounts of this man's life. And we're going to say that he actually becomes a patron of the arts going forward, and he passes his very tradition down to his children. In fact, this continues through future generations of his family, all the way down to the 1800s, when descendant Gilles inherits a theater in Paris. He is overjoyed to follow in the footsteps of those who came before him. However, trouble is brewing as he soon discovers that this theater is haunted by a ghost said to reside in the catacombs below. This presence soon begins to make demands regarding the theater's productions, and Gillis remembers the stories of his however many greats-grandfather attempting to shut down a theater when a woman took the stage. Gillis refuses to repeat Sir Edmund's mistake and strikes down the demands of this phantom. However, this descendant may have to reckon with some dire consequences in the tradition of his family's tenuous relationship with the theater.
Oh,
well, I haven't seen it, but it sounds like a Phantom of the Opera.
yes.
That is correct.
Which version?
The 2004 or 5 one,
the 2000s
right?
one.
Gerard Butler.
The one with Emmy Rossum in it.
Yes, those two.
Yeah, and that's the actor you're connecting is Simon Callow.
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah. I actually didn't know that he was in that until now.
He's like, they bring like they're selling the theater or something. I don't know that it's like explained that well. It's like him and another guy that they're like, these guys own the theater now.
Yeah, he and another gentleman buy the theater, and they have some really bad dubbing during their song. That's just been like the worst part to me.
Yeah.
The dubbing is really bad in their song.
Yeah, I don't know that he's much of a singer. This is a movie that I had a friend in, I guess, middle school when it came out who was really obsessed with this movie. So I watched it a lot at the time. And so I have a lot of nostalgia for it. I rewatched it a couple of years ago and I was like, I still think this is a lot of fun. But Dougie like really did not vibe with it. And I've heard other people, I think Blank Check maybe was talking about this where they were like, we hate this movie. So
I like it.
Thank you. I was like, I can't remember what other podcast I listened to where they were talking about how much they hated it, but I'm glad you, Anna, and I are on the same page. This is a fun movie.
It is.
Cool.
Yeah.
So I am totally Phantom of the Opera pilled because my sister, by the way, a past guest on this podcast, is pretty good at piano, and she absolutely loved the Phantom of the Opera score. So I heard all of the songs on piano. To me,
Yes.
I still cannot get through listening to the song Music of the Night without crying. When that song gets to the end, I am like, one of the most beautiful songs ever written.
I loved playing that on the piano.
Yeah.
Being able to do the dun
Yes,
dun dun dun
all in the
dun.
octaves. Dun, 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 dun. Yeah, yep. To me, the music is absolutely in my bones. Like that, you will not hear a bad word out of my mouth for Phantom. So
Very glad to hear that. I mean, Andrew Lloyd Webber, he has his peaks, he has his valleys. The sequel to The Phantom of the Opera is terrible, but like a mess in an entertaining way. It's set in Coney Island.
Oh, no.
His cat tried to destroy the score, but he rewrote it. So that'll, that just gives you a little taste.
I was gonna say another unfortunate run-in with cats.
Exactly.
I guess.
Okay, so my connected universe is not quite as elegantly stated as Madeline's, and you have to kind of suspend time because
We're happy
I don't
to do
know. Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
So Philip Henslow is so upset that he didn't get to have his pirate play that he takes his money from this performance of Romeo and Juliet. He buys a boat. He names it the Black Pearl, and he takes to the seas. He eventually comes across some cursed gold and dooms his crew to become ghosts until they return it all to where it came from. He is Captain Barbossa.
Yes.
I also considered that.
Same here.
I haven't seen the movie since high school, but that was a very formative. Saw it with my friends. All of us just like loved it. Had the best time. Kind of movie.
I probably saw that movie at least 4 times in theaters, and that was, I think, the first time I ever saw a movie and was like, cinema.
Yeah.
This is it. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know what that says about me and my taste.
No,
but
it's good taste.
That was my.
It's a classic.
I think those first few Pirates movies are really great theater experiences.
Yeah.
And the Hans Zimmer score is just like to die for.
Yes.
I will like put that on during work time for my students, and I'll be like, guys, listen to this. Listen. And they're just like, gosh, you're insane. And I'm like, yes, but listen to this music and listen. And then the feeling.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh my gosh,
Yes.
can you go back to talking about history? Like, but listen to the score.
Oh, I love it.
It's sweeping and majestic.
Very cool. I could go next here. Mine's pretty short, but I'll jump in. So when we meet Hugh Fennyman, we see that he is a moneylender who is unafraid to use physical force to pressure his borrowers. And I'm going to say that this moral turpitude is a deep-seated negative trait that goes on for several generations in the Fennyman line, well past the 16th century and into current day. So about 350 years later, in the Fennyman bloodline, there is a son that's born in Britain, and his name is Thomas Griffin, who, as he matures into adulthood, is just not satisfied with being a successful businessman and benefactor, and he has to dip his toe into the Chinese crime syndicate in order to satisfy these dramatic and violent urges that he has. One of these criminal activities that he masterminds is the kidnapping of the daughter of a Chinese diplomat that is staying in the United States. And he demands a very hefty ransom. But Griffin, who's also known on the street in China and in the United States as Juntao, does not count on the fact that he is about to be thwarted by a dogged Chinese detective with personal ties to the kidnapped child and a loquacious LAPD officer eager to prove himself amongst the FBI.
I was wrong, but I do know what it is now.
Is this Rush Hour?
Yeah.
This is Rush Hour. Yes.
Oh,
I
it shows
thought-
you how long it's been since I've seen it. I didn't remember Tom Wilkinson in it.
I didn't either until I rewatched clips of it like 4 or 5 years ago. And I was like, what is Tom Wilkinson doing in this movie?
I thought you were going to go Batman Begins.
Oh, I could have.
Oh, yeah,
I
that's
guess.
a good one, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I was like, he's a gangster.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
would have expected you to go Michael Clayton.
Well, he's good
Yeah.
in Michael Hayden. I like that there's a criminal
Totally.
undercurrent to
Yes.
the characters in both of these films. That's what I wanted to
Yeah.
exploit. Yeah, that is Tom Wilkinson plays Thomas Griffin in Rush Hour, but also plays Fennyman in Shakespeare in Love.
Nice. I think those two are the same year.
They are. That's
Yeah.
another reason why I wanted
That's
to go there.
insane.
I know.
Nice.
Like
These
what
actors
a
this year, did they sleep?
Did he bring his apothecary hat to
You know
Rush
what?
Hour?
I'm gonna have to check the footage on that.
I would imagine he shot Rush Hour first. But yeah, I've got one more scenario to carry us out.
Yeah, let's do it.
I'm interested to see if anyone gets this one. So, whatever bumps happen along the way, actor Ned Allen generally serves as a constructive presence in the ongoing effort of producing and performing Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, including suggesting that title. Perhaps on the hereditary and maybe metaphysical level, an understanding of discord amongst noble families comes naturally to him, and his compulsion towards service to drama acts as some kind of familial repentance for a chain of events generated by his several times great-grandfather, a French nobleman named Pierre d'Alençon. Having lived 2 centuries earlier, d'Alençon served as lord over a squire named Jean de Carouge, who became married to the daughter of a wealthy landowner, whose name was Marguerite de Thibouville, before becoming married and assuming the name Marguerite de Carouge. Despite Jean being promised a large dowry by Marguerite's father, Robert, Robert's death would lead d'Alençon to seize his land, Robert's land, in repayment for back taxes, thus stripping Marguerite of her dowry and giving it instead to a more favored knight named Jacques Legris. The ensuing events would lead to a lightweight truce between Jean de Carouge and Jacques Legris, an incident between Legris and Marguerite, and subsequently a scandalous accusation from Marguerite and a duel to the death.
You just kind of gave it away, I think, there.
Yeah,
the
the end there.
There was a hint. Does anyone want to say it?
I mean, Anna, do you know this one?
No.
So this is The Last Duel, right?
Yes.
That was my guess. I had no idea he was in this.
Ben Affleck is in that movie in a smaller part, but
co-written with the Good Will Hunting Dream Team on this.
yeah, it was him, Matt Damon, and then Nicole Holofcener too.
Yeah, like I knew Matt Damon's involvement, and thus I should have just assumed that Ben Affleck they come as a package. But that you know, they've both made a lot of movies, and that's not always true. So.
Yeah.
And Dunkin' Donuts commercials.
Yes, true.
Let's not forget about those.
Yeah, The Last Duel. Also, Ned Allen was not factually and in any way related to Pierre d'Alençon, just for the record. But Last Duel, underseen movie. I think it's one of Ridley Scott's best movies of the last few years. I highly recommend it.
Anna's
Yes.
had to add like 7 movies.
I'm
to
never
her
going to
watch
finish
list in
this. I'm never going to finish this
conversation.
list. My entire podcast is just going to be never seen movies for like all time.
Well, you know where to find us if you ever want to talk.
You know I will. Every single one of those, I'm going to be like, contact sleepless.
Oh, man.
We're honored to have provided.
Absolutely.
I love it.
Well, we did it. We talked Shakespeare in Love. Are there any final thoughts that we want to say about this film?
I mean, this film, we talked about like historical fiction. To me, it feels like fan fiction. I think
That's valid.
you know, with fan fiction, there is also a pretty broad spectrum of quality of fan fiction. So if you look at like this, and then you look at Amadeus, you know, they're on like opposite sides of the historical fan fiction spectrum. But I think enjoy both to a certain extent, and I had a lot of fun with this film.
I just want to shout out the Dame Judi Dench of it all. Like, I don't think we really talked enough about how just like brutal she is as Queen Elizabeth. Like,
man.
barbs left and right. Just what a champ. What an icon.
Yeah.
She is the moment, and she lives it.
Yeah.
100%.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that was a notable Oscar win for very limited screen time. 8 minutes, as people have calculated it. But I mean, oh boy, does she seize all 8 of them.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, with this movie, I think I'm glad to have come to it in a time when we have some remove from its Oscar campaign and can kind of just assess it purely as a movie. And I think it has a lot of great things to offer. It's a really, in its own way, a unique treatment of its subject matter. One that is in dialogue with a lot of other similarly ingenious things, Hamnet among them, but there are many. And going into this conversation, I was a little more intimidated with this movie than I usually am with many of the movies we cover, just because of like the dialogue is so has such a high bar in it, much like a Shakespeare play, so many different undercurrents that influence the flow of a pretty tight narrative. So I found it kind of a lot to manage in anticipation, but I'm really glad with how this conversation has turned out and just to have engaged with the movie in general.
Yeah, in general, I feel like this movie delivers really a rather enjoyable movie that even by the end of it, I think ties things up in a nice manner. There was a seriousness to the tone at the end that I was like, I don't know if it really needs this, but otherwise, like generally good. And I had a great time talking about it with the three of you. This was very, very fun. So thank you for doing this. This was really cool.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Anna, for joining us. This was so great.
Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, it's been a delight.
So we talked a little bit about what your current season is, but can you tell the people where to find you and what kind of stuff you're talking about right now?
Absolutely. So you can follow me wherever you listen to your pods, subscribe, Stone's Top Tens. You can also follow me on Instagram at Stone's Top Tens or email me at stonestoptens@gmail.com. Honestly, any feedback interaction is always fun. I am currently doing classic literature turned film, but I'm thinking I'll probably be doing a never seen season once I finish that up,
Nice.
because I have now added like almost an entire season's worth of films. But I've done seasons on, like I said, my first one ever was romantic comedies because they're just so near and dear to my heart. I've done musicals, I've done sports movies, I've done music, not musicals, which is a unique category of just movies that are about music. But please don't ever go into a season expecting only 10 episodes because that has never happened, even in the season I was sure it was going to. And with love, that was partially because of all of you, because we had such a good discussion about Close Encounters that it was a two-parter. So as long as you don't go in expecting me to be good at decisions, we're going to be fine.
Excellent.
But thank you so much for having me on. This was delightful.
Hey, that was so lovely, everything that you just said. And thank you so much for being here.
Yeah. Thank you.
So please, everyone, check out Anna. I mean, if you enjoyed this particular episode, then I feel like her current season is going to be absolutely up your alley. And as we said up top, I'm going to be joining her to talk Anna Karenina. That's coming out around this same time. It may already be out or it may be out soon. So definitely check that out.
Yeah. Well, the next time you hear from us, we're going to continue our cycle of Oscar-worthy rom-coms with a suggestion box. That's a film that at least one of us has seen already and is recommending for the group. And we're going to hop through time a little bit. We have just covered a film from the late 90s. Now we're going to rewind almost 40 years to another Best Picture winner that was a game changer for the category, and that is The Apartment.
Yes.
The Billy Wilder film from 1960 starring Shirley MacLaine and Jack Lemmon in unforgettable performances. I'm very excited to discuss it with you all. I am really curious to hear what you have to say about it.
Yeah. I'm very excited. I'm the one this is being suggested to because I have not seen it. We did cover Amy Heckerling's film Loser a while back, which is a very loose adaptation of The Apartment and a very bad movie that I did not enjoy watching. And so I definitely have much higher hopes for The Apartment.
And I think those higher expectations will be met. Yeah, I'm excited to rewatch this movie. I used to own it on DVD years ago. And yeah, I think a very formative rom-com. So I think this will be really, really fun to get into.
Absolutely.
For sure. Well, in addition to this podcast, you can follow us on TikTok and Instagram and now YouTube at Sleepless Cinematic Pod. You can contact us via email. We would love to hear from you. Write to us at sleeplesscinematicpod@gmail.com. If you're on Letterboxd, you can follow me, Madeline, at Patroness of Cats. Anna, are you on Letterboxd?
I am, but I am not very active.
Your podcast is your version of Letterboxd, right?
For sure.
It really
Oh.
is. If you
That's a
want to know
great
what I'm
point.
watching, that's about it.
Same with me, by the way.
But if you want to follow me on Letterboxd, you can do so at Julian_Barthold. If you're listening to us for the first time, thank you for finding us. Or if this is the 5th or 6th or 75th time you've listened to us, thank you so much for sticking with us. We have really grown to love doing this, and it means the world to have our budding listenership grow.
And if you haven't already, we'd ask you, return listener, to please write us a positive review and rate us on your podcast platform of choice. This is one of the best ways for new listeners to find us and help our podcast take its next steps. And you could always keep it grassroots. You can tell a friend to tell a friend about the Sleepless Cinematic Podcast. That helps too.
Well, that'll have them rolling in the aisles.